'Cause the blue gum woman ain't the style nowadays. I brought her from the south and she's going on back. Else I'll use her head for a carpet drag. This poem is an example of asymmetry in Negro poetry similar to that of dancing. And now it's time for our debate with Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois.
I am very gracious that the most prominent figures of our era have invited me to the lowdown. I am so enraptured with the idea of finally being able to articulate to Washington why his thesis involving the hand of progress will never work in American society. I also wrote an essay called The Criteria of Negro Art, which discusses my thoughts on African American art, which was discussed earlier, so find it at your local bookstores. Good morning, Mr. Washington. If Mr. Washington will begin, I would like to rehear his opinion so I can tell him why he is mistaken.
It would be my pleasure. What we need as a race is to get along with the whites. They recognize our importance and greatness, which allows for us to cement our friendship with them. Let me tell you a story. There was a ship lost at sea, and it saw a friendly ship nearby. They asked the friendly ship for water, and it replied, "Cast down your bucket where you are." The lost ship didn't listen and continued to ask for water 4 or 5 more times, but every time they asked, the same reply was given, "Cast down your bucket where you are." The captain of the lost ship finally listened and tossed down his bucket. When he brought it back up, it was full of the purest, most refreshing water from the Amazon River. Now, as a race, we need to cast down our buckets and become friends of the white men here in this foreign land we call America. And white people need to do the same. We have been loyal to you and we're hard workers. If you befriend us, you won't regret it. We need to work together like the fingers on a hand. We are separate, but we are all essential for mutual progress.
Firstly, I would like to impress upon the notion that Washington is deluded into thinking that his solution of the friendship of the races will eventually affect change for African Americans. The hand of progress is merely too pragmatic. Washington does not realize that the major problem today is that of the problem of the color line. African Americans are troubled with what I call a double consciousness. This is a sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others. He is both American and African American, two tensions warring within his body. It is a struggle to find a place in the world as an African American without oppression and racism.
Color line, schmeller line. You see a color line because you want to see a color line. Yeah, we have 2 races co-inhabiting the same country, but we need to move past our hostility if we want change. We need to stop blaming others and pitting ourselves for our shortcomings. I worked my butt off to get to where I am, and I didn't get here by blaming a color line and talking about my double consciousness. If we lift ourselves up instead of boo-hooing about how bad we have it, we'll make some progress.
That was lovely, Washington, really. However, your ideas are not original. Since the Civil War and the Reconstruction of the South, these ideas have been present. However, I will contend that Washington is the first to bring all these ideas together. He is brilliant at marketing himself. Nevertheless, he is not elected by the people. Washington is merely a compromiser between the North, South, and African Americans. He endorses the attitude that African Americans must submit and adjust to the position society dictates to us, and essentially accepts the assumed inferiority of African Americans because he does not fight.
Du Bois, you were born in Massachusetts. That's a northern state, right? You got your PhD at Harvard. Kudos, by the way. So before you tell me that I'm not representative of my race, let's put it out there that you are no more representative than I am. You aren't a man of the people, you're an elite. While you theorize about how bad slavery was and how bad our race had it, I lived it. You have no experience to base your theories on. When you've been born on a plantation, worked in a coal and salt mine, traveled by foot to get an education without a dime in your pocket, and worked as a janitor while being a student, come talk to me. And furthermore, who was the one that was asked to speak at the Atlanta Exposition as a representative of our race? It was me. Jealousy is an ugly trait, Du Bois.
Oh sure, say I don't understand. I had worked for my education. I was the first African American to graduate Harvard, so I thank you for your kudos. However, you are misplaced in saying that my background is elitist. Although I did not experience slavery firsthand, I still had a difficult childhood. However, I will not justify my difficult childhood because Washington wants me out to make me as a jealous figure. Instead, I'll give you relevant facts pertaining to this debate. Washington wants us to stop fighting for political power, civil rights, and higher education for youth until all Americans can be friends. Instead of progress, his thesis has led to the disenfranchisement of African Americans because there has been no push to vote. Secondly, because there is no push for civil rights, it is now legal that African Americans are treated as inferior by the court case Plessy v. Ferguson. And finally, our children are not receiving the opportunity to gain higher education because of the withdrawal of aid due to the emphasis on trade training. It might not be fair to give Washington all the credit for these major failures, but his propaganda has brought about this swift change.
I'm not saying that African Americans don't need rights. I'm saying that they're not going to come easy. And if it's going to take a while to get rights, which it is, then we need to contribute to society. All I'm saying is that we need to take baby steps. We need to realize that there is no shame in manual labor.
There is shame in manual labor when you insist on it over education. Washington is a hypocrite because although he fights for African American businessmen and property holders to be important in society, they cannot defend their rights because they're not supposed to fight for our own political power. And the same goes for the hypocrisy of insisting on self-respect when we can't even fight the lies that are perpetuated about African Americans being inferior. Washington is not helping African Americans, but stemming our process.
It's not my duty to help all African Americans. Have you been listening to anything I've been saying? We all need to help ourselves. We were constrained by the system of slavery, but we aren't anymore. And I understand that we need rights, but we need to be patient because we need time to better ourselves, and it's not going to happen overnight. Yeah, people are going to be caught off guard and offended by what I say, but give it time and you'll see that I'm right.
We must fight for the rights of vote, civil equality, and education of youth according to ability. This is the only way we'll get somewhere in society. It is important that equality is emphasized.
Can you please calm down? I think that you're absolutely right. We do need those things. We do need equality. But like I said, we're not going to get it overnight. We need to work towards them, and being hostile and angry isn't going to help anybody.
Anger shows how passionate we are. You agree with me because I'm right.
How'd you know? You grew up in a predominantly white town and have only heard and read about what slavery was like. I'm not blaming our race for anything, nor am I condoning discrimination. But I do think that we need to stop blaming our shortcomings on things that we have no control over. What we do have control over is ourselves, and we should continue to progress and better ourselves. Stop pointing the finger of blame and start doing something about the situation that we're in.
Just because I was not in bondage by the cuffs of slavery does not mean I do not understand the social ramifications of slavery. Washington is not helping change. Instead, he is perpetuating the progressive decline of African American politics, civil rights, and education. I hope you understand what you have done.
What a drama queen.
Next time on The Lowdown, we'll investigate the accident, or should I say, murder, of Claire and Nella Larson's novel Passing. It will be a gregarious investigative program that you don't want to miss. Thank you for tuning in.